Hello everyone. So last time we learned how to factor, and so now we are going to learn how to solve quadratics by factoring. Now please remember that in order to solve a quadratic, we are finding the solutions, the roots, our zeros, our x-intercepts by factoring, rather than graphing, which we did last unit. Okay, so our whole purpose of this is to find our root zeros, etc. Alright, so in order to find our solutions, we're going to make sure that our quadratic equation is set equal to 0. Okay, cool. So for number 1, we're set equal to 0. We need to factor the left side, which is where all of your terms are. Okay? So let's go ahead and factor this equation. So we don't have a greatest common factor, and our a is set equal to 1. So this is the easiest type of problem. So we're going to list out our factors of 3, which are 1 and 3. And then we're going to factor it. So our two parentheses, put an x in both, 3 and 1. And then we need to add to get to 4, so that's going to be plus 3 plus 1. Okay, so it's factored. And it is set equal to 0. So then we're going to set each factor to equal 0 and solve for x. Okay? So that means that we're going to set both of our parentheses equal to 0. So I'm going to have x plus 3 equals 0 and x plus 1 equals 0. Alright, and so we're going to subtract 3 from both sides to get x equals negative 3. We're going to subtract 1 from both sides to get x equals negative 1. And that's how we solve. And we're done. Alright? And I know it says to write our answer using curly braces, but we don't have to. Alright? We're not going to do that. Instead, we can just box our answers. Alrighty. So let's try the next one. So no greatest common factor, and our a is set equal to 1. So we don't have to multiply. So list out your factors of 24. 2 and 12, 3, 8, 4, 6. Okay? And so we need to find which ones add or subtract to give us 11. So I'm going to unfold this paper real quick. There we go. Which is going to be 3 and 8. So x's, and then have a 3 and an 8. And then since this sign is positive, our larger number is positive. And since we need to get to 11, we're going to add. And since our a was 1, we don't need to divide. And now we're just going to set each of our parentheses equal to 0. And we're going to solve. So we would subtract 3 from both sides to get x equals negative 3. Subtract 8 from both sides to get x equals negative 8. And we're done. Alright? Next one. Check to make sure that we're set equal to 0. Check to make sure we don't have greatest common factor, that our a is equal to 1, and then list out your factors of 2. Then write your parentheses. Okay, our only factors are 1 and 2. Since 2 is our larger number, it's going to take that plus sign. And this time, we need to get to 1. So it needs to be 2 minus 1 will give us 1. And then set our parentheses equal to 0.
Cupcakes.
Oh,
Derek Allen.
Alright, and then x minus 1 equals 0. And then we're going to solve for x, so we're just going to subtract 2 from both sides to get x equals negative 2. And we're going to add 1 to both sides to get x equals positive 1. And those are our answers. Okay? Alrighty. So now I'm just going to do the first column, because I think we're starting to get the hang of it. Alrighty. So next, a is equal to 1. No greatest common factor, and we're set equal to 0, so factors of 21. Alright, which ones are going to add up to give you 10? is going to be 3 and 7. Our 7 is going to be negative, because remember, largest number always takes this sign. And then our 3 also has to be negative, because we're going from negative 7 to negative 10. And also, negative 7 times negative 3 gives us positive 21. So now we're going to set them equal to 0. And so x equals positive 7 and positive 3. This is another way to write your answers. Alrighty. Next, we're set equal to 0, no greatest common factor, and our a is 1. So if you notice, whenever our a is 1, we do not have a greatest common factor. Alright, so factors of 25. Parentheses, x's. Which one is going to add to give us 10? That's going to be our 5 and 5. And because we're adding to give us 10, both of them are going to be positive. And so, when we set our parentheses equal to 0, we get the exact same answer. And so this one actually only has one solution. X equals negative 5. Alright. And then for this one, make sure that we're set equal to 0. And we do have a greatest common factor. It's going to be x. So I'm going to take out an x. I'm going to have my parentheses. X squared, take out an x, I'm left with an x. And then negative 8x, I take out an x, so I'm left with negative 8. And so now I need to set both of these equal to 0. And so x equals 0, that's a solution. And then add 8 to both sides, so x equals 8. Alright, let's also do 10. So 3x squared plus 15x, it's set equal to 0, and I do have a greatest common factor, because I can divide both of these by 3x. So I'm going to take out 3x. 3 divided by 3 gives me 1. X squared over x leaves me with 1x. 15 divided by 3 gives me 5. X divided by x, I have no more. So we're going to set both of these equal to 0. So 3x equals 0. X plus 5 equals 0. For this one, we need to divide by 3. To get x equals 0 divided by 3 gives us 0. Here we subtract 5 to get x equals negative 5. And so those are our solutions. Alrighty? Okay. So I think we've got the hang of those. So let's take a look at 13. Alright? So for 13, we're set equal to 0, and our a is equal to 1, so no greatest common factor. So let's find our factors of 64. Now if you notice, our b term, our middle term, like over here, because you can still see it, is our x term. So because we don't have a b term, we could actually rewrite this as x squared plus 0x minus 64. And so whatever our factors are, they have to add or subtract to give us 0, which means that 64 has a number times itself, which is going to be 8 and 8. So we can do 1 and 64, and 2 and 32, and 3, but I know it's going to be 8 and 8. And then, because we need to get to 0, one of our answers is going to be positive, the other is going to be negative. And so when we set this equal to 0, our signs change. So x equals, this is another way to write it, plus or minus 8. because we would have a positive 8 and a negative 8. All right, just another way to show that. All right, let's try 14. Make sure that we are okay. So z equal to 0, our a is 1, so no greatest common factor. Factors of 25. So we're going to have x's. It needs to add or subtract to give us 0, so that's going to be our 5's. One's going to be plus, the other's going to be minus. So x plus 5 equals 0, x minus 5 equals 0. And so you're going to get x equals positive 5 and negative 5, which is another way to say x equals plus or minus 5. Okay, that's where I'm getting that from, just to make it absolutely explicit. Okay, one or the other. All right, and then for 15, set equal to 0. Since our a is not 1, check to make sure that 4 is not a greatest common factor. And it's not, so check to make sure 2 isn't, and it's not. Okay? So this one's actually a little bit trickier because we're going to have to multiply 4 times 81 to get x squared minus 81 times 4 gives us 324. Alright. And then we need to find our two factors of 324 that are going to add or subtract to give us 0. And you can do 1, 324, but that's going to be very long to find the factors of 18 and 18. Honestly, once you get to this point, and you get right here, take the square root of 324, and that'll give you 18. And then 18 times 18 gives you 324. So that's where I'm getting these from. And so we can do x plus 18, x minus 18. Here's where it gets tricky though. Because we multiplied by 4, remember now we have to divide by 4. And make sure that you reduce your fractions. Okay? So 18 over 4, remember to put it in your calculator, is going to give us x plus 9 over 2, x minus 9 over 2. So you're not the only one who starts to run out of space. And so, once you get here and you're solving, you don't have to slide your 2 in front. You do not have to slide your denominator in front. So instead, just go ahead and set these equal to 0, and you're going to get x equals plus or minus 9 over 2. Alrighty, now let's take a look at 17, because these are equations that are not in standard form, and so you must move everything to the left-hand side and then factor and solve. See? Move, factor, solve. So this is not set equal to 0, so we have to subtract 21 to get it equal to 0. And then find your factors of 21. And then you can set up your parentheses. And then find the ones that are going to add or subtract to give you 4. So that's going to be 7 and 3. Largest number takes that sign, and this one needs to become negative. Alright, and then you set your parentheses equal to 0. But I'm hoping you guys are going to get good enough to recognize that we're just changing the signs. So x is going to be negative 7, x is going to be positive 3. And that's your answer. Alrighty. Okay, so then 18. Subtract 4x from both sides. And we get x squared minus 4x minus 45. Find your factors of 45. I think 3 goes into 45. Yep. And then 5 and 9 will give you that 4. Nine is going to take the negative sign because it's larger. And so then x is going to equal -5 and +9. Alrighty. So I think you guys are starting to get pretty good at this because I know you guys can move factors over. But let's try 20. Okay? And then I think we'll be done. I'll have to check the back page, but after this I think we'll be done. So I have 2 terms on the right hand side now, so I need to move both of them. I'm going to minus 4x, and I'm also going to subtract 1. So we're going to have x squared. Negative 10x minus 4x gives us negative 14x. 49 minus 1 gives me positive 48. 4x minus 4x turns to 0. 1 minus 1 turns to 0. And then you can find your factors of 48. I think 3 goes into it. Okay. And then we can set up our parentheses. 8 and 6 will add to give us 14, and then 8 is going to be negative, and because we need to get to 14, 6 is going to be negative. Negative 8 times negative 6 gives us positive 48, so then our x equals positive 8 and positive 6. Alright, so I think you guys can try the rest of these, and let me check the back, and the back is homework. Alright guys, good luck!